My name's Adrian. I'm an alcoholic. So I'm not going to... It's actually nice to be back. It's just nice to be here. So it's nice to see everyone, even though I don't know everyone here. But what I promise I won't do is I'm not going to be up here for God knows how long talking about a drunk log. So just bear with me, and I'll just share with you what happened in my recovery and how I got sober and what I do today to stay sober. I started for me at a young age. I was 14 years old, and it was after a baseball practice. And this is my first experience with alcohol. It was after baseball practice, and in the summertime, and it was in July, I remember, because it was hot. And this is way back in the day, so some of you weren't born, but I drank like a I think it was 24 Olympia beer cans. And I blacked out, and one of my best friends I said, what was I doing? And he said, well, you blacked out, which, by the way, he got sober 2 years later. But I blacked out, and he said, you were trying to urinate on me. And I'm like, okay. So this is at 14 years old, so I'm going to fast forward to high school. I'm 16 years old, and I'm going to date myself. I don't even care now. But anyway, so I'm 16 years old, and this is the time when cable television came out. Because when I was growing up, there were 3 channels, period. And so cable television isn't what it was like. It's not like it was today. So there's this brown cord in this box where you had to push buttons, and it was just cool that you got more than 3 stations. So I'm 16 years old, and that's the first time I'd smoked marijuana. And I remember that I would eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and watch The Partridge Family and giggle. And so that was my experience with alcohol. That was my experience with a controlled substance, or with a substance. So drugs are part of my story, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And so that's what got me into these rooms. But I do have the disease. I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. I just chose to use a certain drug. But that being said, so I'm 16 or 17 years old, and I used to play a sport, and I guess some said that I was pretty good at it, so I got recruited to go to these colleges to go play, and I didn't want to go play because I didn't want to go too far away because I had a girlfriend, and she was my higher power at the time. I think, I was 18 years old, and so I decided I went away, and all I did is I ended up going to a school where all the kids that I played football against, they all went to the same school, and all we did is just flunk out of college and go to Las Vegas every night. So I decided to come back. I'm 19 years old, and growing up, my dad just stressed in our house. He just said, it's like you guys, he grew up in an era where he just said that him and my mother used to have to ride in the back of the bus and all that, and he would tell me some of his experiences. He was a military guy, and I'm like, oh no, Dad, come on, that didn't happen, really? And he said, yeah. So he said, this was, I'd like all of you kids to, get an education. So I'm 19 years old, and I decided I'm going to take some time off of college, and I'm going to go work for a gas and oil company, Chevron Oil. And it was on a mountain in Wyoming, and they had these man camps. And I worked in the accounting department. So my job was to go out, and there were groups of pipe fitters or whomever, or whatever the trade was. And I had to go check and make sure that they were all at work so that their time cards, were accurate. So you had to stay in these man camps. And on one side of me, there was a preacher. And on the other side of me, there was a drug dealer. And I became friends with the drug dealer. And I remember drinking, in high school, I just would go to kegs, I'd smoke marijuana, it wasn't that big a deal. But I do remember saying to myself, it's like, well, if I ever try cocaine, that would be like doing heroin. I'll never do that. And so anyway, one night, or one afternoon, I met the guy that was the drug dealer. He seemed like a cool guy. He said, look, I can give you this white substance, and you can make some money off of it. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of entrepreneurial, so yeah, I can make a decent profit. And so, long story short, I'm on my way down. I think it's a 2 or 3 hour drive. I'm on my way down to Salt Lake City, and I did snort it all before I got there. So I was in the hole immediately. But I liked it. I liked it. So I'm 19, and then I worked there for a while, and 19 or 20. I worked there for a while, and I think, I got to go back to school because that's what, it's what my dad wants and my mom wants. So I decided to go back to school. Yeah, I was 21 at the time. And for some reason, I joined a fraternity with some guys that I went to school with that I couldn't stand then. And I don't even know why I did that. But I did that for about a year, finished a couple of semesters or whatever. And fast forward to 1982. Yeah, 1982. And I'm liking cocaine, and I'm liking drinking alcohol, and I just like it. And I said, well, I'll just finish college later, So I'm 20. Yeah, I'm 22. I'm 22 years old, and so I'm at the Zephyr Club, and one of my fraternity brothers, I see this guy, and he's got a neck brace on. He was cool. He was from the East Coast. His name was Trigba. We just called him Trig. And I guess I said, dude, what happened to you? He said, I jumped off this roof and I almost broke my neck. So he has this, thing around him, around his neck. Now, at the time, I couldn't decide what I wanted to study in school, but I thought, well, I'll just go into broadcast journalism. So I'm at the Zephyr Club, and I see my friend who says, let's go to this party, and I'll give you some of this stuff, and if you want to sell some... No, he goes, I'll give you some of this stuff. So I'm at the Zephyr, and I see this guy that's on the local news here, and he had just gotten suspended for forging Percodan scripts. And I went up and talked to him at the Zephyr Club, and I said, hey, I just heard you got... there's a party. No, I saw him at the party, and I said, hey, is there any way I could get like an internship? And I was talking to him about what would I need to do to get an internship. And I was talking to him about partying and stuff. And he says, I love to party and stuff. So I give him some of this cocaine. And meanwhile, I'm drinking and all that stuff. And he said, you know what? He said, why don't you meet me next week? Because my friend that was the fraternity brother lived in Park City. He said, if you ever need some stuff, come up to Park City. I said, okay. So I give it to the newscaster that's suspended. And I said, give me a call sometime. So he calls me, because I'm still trying to sell it on the side, and, I'm not making a profit at all, obviously. So he calls me one day and says, I'd like to get some of that stuff. Now, I said, okay, I'll meet you. I meet him on the corner of, if you're from here, the corner of 8th South and 13th East. It's where I went to high school. There's a 7-Eleven, and there's a church. So we take off to go up to Park City. And on the way up, I noticed there's this white van in front of us, and there's this blue car the whole way up. And I'm like, it's kind of weird that we're being followed all the way up here. Anyway, so long story short, we get up there, I go in, and this car keeps going back and down the street, and I said, well, maybe they're just lost. They've been following us for 45 minutes, but maybe they're lost. And so by then, it's no big deal. I give it to him, and then one day he says, hey, I wanted to introduce you to one of my colleagues that I work with at the news station. So I get introduced to him, and I sell him some stuff. Now, let me fast forward. So now my life is progressively getting worse, and I think, I'm 22 years old, or 23 years old, and I'm drinking, and I'm using, and I'm sitting in my room in the basement at my parents' house, and there's these commercials that come on St. Benedict's Treatment Center. It's like, if you ever have a problem with drugs or alcohol, you can give us a call. And I remember thinking, well, if I ever get that bad, I'll give them a call. And so my girlfriend at the time, her and one of my good friends, they have an intervention, and they said, we think you have a drug and alcohol problem. See, because I'm shocked, because nobody in my family has a drug and alcohol problem, because alcoholics and drug addicts live under, bridges and stuff. And so they said, you need to get some help. And I used to walk up the stairs, and my mom would look at me and say, honey, all I can do is pray for you, and I had no idea what she was talking about. So I get introduced to treatment. And so I go to St. Benedict's. And it's cool because I don't have a problem with God. I don't have a problem with the conception of God or something greater than myself. So I get in there and they sign the treatment center, the counselors. And so I wanted the counselor that wasn't the clinical person. So I get this counselor, and this is what I asked him. I remember I said, look, have you ever had somebody that's come in here and, they only had a problem with one substance, and they were able to do the other substance when they got out? And he's like rubbing his beard, and he said, yeah. And he goes, I have had one person. And my mind immediately thought, well, this will be two people, because I just had a problem with cocaine. I started smoking it, and first time I drank, I blacked out, because my rationale was, and I don't want to take up too much time. I mean, my rationale was, look, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out, I'll meet you, I'll have 2 drinks, but I'm only going to have 2 drinks because I don't want to get alcohol poisoning. But I'm smoking cocaine and my heart can blow up at any moment. But it made perfect sense to me. And so anyway, so I go into the treatment center. There's a bunch of older people in there. And the director comes in one day and she said, look, she said, if you think you have a problem with one substance and you go back out and you do this substance, you will always go back to your drug of choice. Now, what flashed in my mind is what always has flashed in my mind. No, well, that won't happen to me. That won't happen to me. So I become friends with these people. I'm in treatment. We get out. First time we get out, I go on the fun bus to Windover with my brother, and there's a cart coming down, and it's alcohol, and they said, hey, would you like a drink? And I'm like, yeah, I can have a drink because I just have a problem with cocaine. So I have a drink, and I go to some of the meetings, but I go late. I don't go to aftercare because I don't want to be confronted, and if I do go, it's only for a short period of time. So I'm doing all this stuff, and in the interim, as I get out of this treatment center, my girlfriend at the time said, well, if this gets bad and you go back out again, I'm going to leave you. And I said, yeah, whatever. So anyway, it got bad, and she left me. And the drug dealer that I saw at a bar after I got out of treatment, he said, so your parents spent all this money for you to go to treatment. What happened? Did you guys exercise? What did you do? And I said, no, we just do this. And I can't buy drugs from you anymore or drink with you anymore. And there's a guy in there as I'm having this conversation because the guy asked me, he said, well, what treatment center did you go to? I said, I went to St. Benedict's. And the guy that's sitting at the bar sits there and turns around and goes, you went to St. Benedict's? I go, yeah. He goes, so did I. And I said, which one? He goes, I went to the one in Ogden. I said, well, how did it work for you? And as he lifted up his drink, he said, I guess it worked fine. So my life's getting progressively worse. I'm going to speed this up. So my life's getting progressively worse. I'm going to meetings, and they kept saying, if you want what we have, and I'm in these meetings, and there's some old dudes in bib overalls with no teeth, and I've said this a few times, holding up a big blue book saying, if you want what we have, and I'm thinking, no, I like Armani suits and BMWs. This isn't going to work for me. And I just couldn't get it. I would have 30 days, and I would have 60 days, I'd have 59 days. That's the most I'd ever stayed sober. So it's the night of the Grammys, 1983. Michael Jackson wins all the Grammy Awards. Get a knock on the door. The guy I sold drugs to is coming up the stairs. I see him. I was like, oh, good. I get to practice all the stuff I learned in treatment. So I opened the door, and I'm getting ready. Here comes the badge. He says, you're under arrest for intent to distribute a controlled substance. So it's $5,000 fine, 30 days in jail. I have to pick the time in jail. And I picked January, got back out. It progressively got worse. I kept hearing it in meetings. It would progressively get worse. So at this time, I've gotten in so much trouble that my father retires from the Army. And this is 19... Yeah, I just couldn't stay sober. I went to see a shrink for 29 days, and 30 days was in jail, and I just couldn't stay sober. And they would say there are those two that are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And I would say, that's me. That's why it won't work. And I remember I told my dad, I said, I'm going to go see this therapist. And he said, son, for whatever we're paying them, they're probably going to tell you whatever you hear, because they told me I had a chemical imbalance. See, that's why. Because I couldn't figure it out. Because no one in my family had a drug and alcohol problem until later I found out that my uncle was just like me, that I'd never met. So anyway, they gave me an ultimatum because I'm in trouble, and my father had a lot to do with me getting sober. So I just put that out. But he used to tell me this. He used to say, you're a sick kid. And I used to look at him like, well, what do you mean? He goes, you're just sick. Emotionally. He didn't say emotionally because you're a sick kid, and he had a heart attack a couple years before, and he said, I think God kept me around to help you straighten up. And I said, yeah, Dad, whatever. So I get sober. They gave me an ultimatum. It says, you have to, because I stole my dad's checkbook and forged his name, because he would never press charges against his son. He pressed charges against me, and so that. That happened. And then I'd be out partying, I would come home, and he would leave like $50 on the table, or he'd leave his wallet out, or he would leave money here or whatever. And, I would take it. And so I got an ultimatum. Basically, they said, look, here's the deal. It's like, you're going to end up in prison, because I couldn't get it. It's like, well, you come, everybody seems normal in your family, so I thought. And he said, we give you two choices. You can wear a necklace around your neck, can't go out of a 30-foot radius, you have to go to a meeting once a week, and you have to go back to aftercare. And I had to think about it for a minute. It's like, what? So I said, okay, I'll go back to aftercare. And I remember I went back to aftercare, and I thought, I just listened, and I just couldn't stay sober. And because the longest I'd been sober was 59 days. So I'm sober 30 days. I'll try to tie this all together in the end. But I'm sober 30 days, and I'm going to meetings, and I get up, and I get a 30-day chip, and I see all the old-timers and stuff, and they just, they shake their head, and just, like, we'll see. And so then I'm sober 60 days, and I'll fast forward. I'm sober 90 days, and I'm starting to like this program because that's the longest I've been sober. And I remember thinking to myself, the thing I probably would drink and use over is if something ever happened to my dad. And so I'm sober 6 months, 9 months, and then my dad went in the hospital to get something checked out, and I'm 9 months sober. I said, I called the day he was supposed to come home, and the phone, my brother got on the phone, which I thought was weird because the nurse answered it. And I said, well, when's Dad coming home? And he said, well, Dad just passed away. And so I remember thinking the word powerlessness, and I remember, because he died when I was 9 months sober, and I, by God's grace, I didn't drink or use over that, and we had a military funeral for him, and so I put my 9-month chips in his casket. But when I got sober, it was probably about 4 months sober, I said, Dad, look, I'm sorry I stole from you and I did this. And he looked at me, he said, you're a sick, he goes, you were a sick kid. And he said, I want you to, the people that you're going to meetings with, he goes, I want you to hang around those people and stay close to those people. And I said, okay. And he said, well, it's good that you can recognize that you've made some mistakes. And he said, I just want to share something with you. He goes, I used to leave money laying out and all that stuff. And he said, you probably thought that I misplaced it, or do you understand why I did that? I said, no. He said, well, you probably thought I misplaced it or whatever, and you took it. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I did that because I wanted you to see who you had become. So that's always kind of resonated with me. So I'm 9 months sober. I get my year chip. Now we get into the good part. And anyway, so I get into my chip. I get my chip, and I'm sober because I just thought what they said was true in the beginning when they said, just go to meetings and your life will get better. Yeah, it did, physically and monetarily, but emotionally it didn't, because I couldn't understand why I was acting the same way. I'm 3 years sober. Now I'm bumped up to 3 years sober. Gentleman comes in and talks about how he hit a bottom in sobriety that was far worse than anything drinking and using. And that I could relate to. And he talked about about the 12 steps and how he was taught to apply them in his life on a daily basis. And that's when he was able to be comfortable in his own skin, where he could walk into a room and if the door shut, they weren't talking about him. Or he could drive down the road and not have that rat race going on and wanting to get even with them. And he taught me, that's what saved my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. He taught me that, sobriety, he taught me that yesterday doesn't count. Because some people equate time with mental health. Seriously, that hasn't been my experience. So, in moving forward, Alcoholics Anonymous is all that I have. It saved my life, and I don't play games with it. I don't joke about it. I don't care if it's the best thing on the menu. If it's alcohol is in it, I'm not going to have it. I will say this. I made a lot of excuses why I couldn't stay sober. So I've been to jail. I've been in and out of these rooms, and that's where my heart goes, to the person that's come in and out. If you're that person that's come in and out, because I used to hang out with this guy, and he used to say, this person will never make it, that person will never make it, this person will never make it. And I turned to him one day, I said, you know what? Life is strange enough, and so is Alcoholics Anonymous. That person one day might end up being your sponsor. So I've never judged anybody that's come in and out of these rooms. That's not my right, but I still know what that feels like today, to come in and out of these rooms. And if somebody judges you that comes in and out of these rooms, just get some different friends in these rooms. And not everybody is who they say they are in these rooms. And you guys have all figured that out. And there's a bunch of misnomers. And here's some of them. This I could never understand. It's like you're not supposed to get in a relationship for a year. That's not written anywhere. Some treatment center made that up. You're in your prime and you're not going to have a physical contact with somebody. If you do get a girlfriend or boyfriend and you guys end up together, that's great. But just don't come up here and say you broke up because you got in a relationship. Just come up here and say you broke up because you wanted to drink and use. Because that's the bottom line. And I'm just not a guy that's big on excuses. And yeah, I'm pretty hardcore, but it saved my life, and Alcoholics Anonymous is my life. My father used to say this to me. He said, "Son, do you ever want kids?" And I said, "No, Dad, why would I want children? It's like I got brothers and sisters that could do that." Well, I have 2 children who I love more than life itself, and one of them's 26 and one of them's 29. One of them just got his MBA from Harvard, and the other one, she does cybersecurity. She graduated from the U 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not saying that to impress you. That has nothing to do with me, because my sobriety has nothing to do with me. Because there's a lot of mornings that I wake up and I think, how did this all happen? And I realize it has nothing to do with me. So when somebody tells you that you have to be miserable for 90 days, or don't work the steps for 6 months or 30 days, that's not true. It's a daily reprieve. And it's really that simple. If you can read, you can learn. There's no sit time to work the steps, except now. But people will have you believe that, I waited 12 years. Man, if I had to wait 12 months to work the steps, let me just put it to you this way. I'll tell you what, I'll challenge you. Just go to a meeting for a year. Don't do anything. Don't read the book. Don't do anything. I'll come talk to you after a year and tell me if you don't feel like blowing your head off. Seriously. But, the relationship thing, I already have personal relationships. And I'm not trying to stand up here and tell you that I'm a saint, because I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. But I'm grateful for my sobriety, and it's precious to me. So I just turned 61 in October. I've been sober 36 years. My sobriety date is May 9th, 1985. And it has nothing to do with me, but there are a few things that I haven't forgot about, especially with my father. It's funny. The day of my dad's funeral, there was a guy that was driving the hearse, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I recognize you from the Alamo Club." And I didn't see that guy again until 6 years later, and he was an older gentleman. And I saw him at a noon meeting the day of my wedding. And my dad had a lot to do with me getting sober, and it's by God's grace. And the excuse thing I heard earlier, and it's not to say anything, but it's like I went to meetings with some old-timers. A couple of them dropped the N-word, So I could have just easily said, "You know what, there are a bunch of racists here, I'm not going to come." But that wasn't the case. And if you want to stay sober bad enough, you'll do it. You'll do it. And my life is good today. I don't really have anything to complain about. But I just also I do have a couple things to complain about. So my untreated alcoholism works like this. I was telling Darren this. It's like, this drives me nuts. I mean, I don't care how. This drives me nuts. And it's not my business. And I know I need to let it go. But I got to share the good along with the bad. But it's the hybrid meeting. It makes me incensed. It's like, you can't get out of bed and come, which is none of my business. But so if I'm Mr. Sobriety with 36 years of sobriety, explain to me why I've got that problem. Well, it's because I haven't worked any steps and I want to run the world. And that's my alcoholism today. And so, I don't know. All I can say is that it's a great program. And if you come in and out and you fell, just keep coming back, because I kept coming back. And I'll tell you this, if somebody won't talk to you, I'll talk to you. I'll listen to you. I won't judge you, and I'll be your friend, because I know what that feels like. Yeah, the first time is probably your best shot, but that didn't happen for me. So, I'm really grateful that you let me share my story, and I'll close with this, because I close with this when I celebrate my birthday, and I haven't done that for a while, but some guys that passed away kind of stole this from them, but one used to say, some days I'm a shining example of what Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer, and other days I just don't drink. So thanks for letting me share.